I'm announcing today that we're going to have to make additional cuts in the budget for fiscal year 10. January tax collections were considerably below the estimate. We had anticipated collecting $40.5 million more in January than we actually collected. Revenue was 11.16% short in January. This is the 17th consecutive month where revenue has been below the estimate, and it's the 14th month in a row where revenue was actually below what we collected this month last year. Year-to-date collections are approximately 8.53% below what we had anticipated. And as you know, in the last couple of months, the revenue figures have gotten worse as compared to what we anticipated. The cuts that we announced today will amount to about $21 million to raise the total to $458,500,000. That includes both general fund cuts and special fund cuts, including the Education Enhancement Fund. These cuts are probably optimistic. I mention that because there was some conversation among some in state government that we were cutting too much. My own view is if there's a criticism, it is that we're not cutting enough. We are required to have a balanced budget in Mississippi, and as you know, as we've talked about several times this year and last, it is the governor who is required to make the cuts when revenue falls short of the revenue estimate upon which the budget is based. This is the fourth round of cuts that we've made this year. I've made these cuts as quickly as I could because the departments and agencies that have to actually cut their budgets, the sooner they know, the easier it is or the less difficult it is for them to make the adjustments. As you know, the Supreme Court this month has handed down an order in which they find that the Supreme Court is exempt from cuts under the statute by which most other agencies are cut. Since my only recourse would be to appeal that to the Supreme Court, I thought that wouldn't be a very wise expenditure of the taxpayers' money. So we have complied with that order, and that means that there's another $1.5 million of cuts that are absorbed by the other departments and agencies. Similarly, as you know, the legislature exempted itself in this statute, so there are no cuts to the legislature in this statute. The legislative budget would be cut about $2.5 million if it were not exempt. I wish the legislature gave me the authority to cut some things more than 8.664 and cut some things less than 8.664. Unfortunately, even though the Senate passed an amendment to state law to allow that, the House chose not to. And I would just say that the ability to set some priorities, I think, would be useful for the governor. Now, the legislature has tried to make some restorations in order to accomplish indirectly what or maybe directly what I asked them to let me do by having flexibility. And we will see where we end up on those two varying pieces of legislation. But I will say the House put nothing for corrections in their restoration, which means corrections would have to be cut $29 million, which would require thousands of convicts to be let out of the penitentiary and turned loose on the streets who have had no preparation by by qualifying for parole, by having any kind of pre-release training or preparation. And I think it's totally irresponsible to restore nothing, or as in the Senate's case, which the Senate did better, they restored $4 million out of the $29 million to corrections. This is a real problem in what's been done, and we will see as we go through whether we can work through that. Secondly, there are some who continue to want to spend $100 million, including to drain another $50 million out of the rainy day fund, which I very strongly oppose. I have agreed, in fact offered, to allow $50 million to be taken out of the health care trust fund for this year and to draw down on that fund for at least 4 years. But we cannot spend all our reserves or a big part of our reserves in 1 year. We haven't even begun the budget for fiscal year 11 that starts July the 1st, and at best we've spent $173 million out of our reserves, at best. Now, with what's happened with corrections, we would have to go find another $12 to $20 million somewhere, again, out of some form of a contingency or a reserve fund. So we just have to be careful, and the public needs to tell their legislators, don't irresponsibly spend down what reserves we have on this year, because next year's budget is going to be tougher. And I suspect that fiscal year 12 will be the hardest of all. I will close by saying that I appreciate the Senate, which has passed Senate Bill 2775 to allow department heads and agencies to have more flexibility to meet these savings that they have to make. To have lump sum budget authority, that is, to be able to move money around within their budgets, and also to be taken out from under the bureaucratic rules of the Personnel Board. Both of these things are going to be absolutely essential, and I believe virtually every manager in state government, whether they are among the few that report to the governor or they are at mental health, education, the health department, or anywhere else, I think they will all tell you that one of the keys to having a chance to manage this in a way that does virtually no harm at all would be to allow them to have lump sum budgeting and be out from under the Personnel Board.